and we are on. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Quick piece of news. This is my last interview with the old basement. That's right. We should be getting some drywall. So my wife will be very happy about that because the basement disaster will no longer be my fault. Just kidding. It will be my fault. I'm very excited about tonight's interview. This guy is all over social media, but much more important than that, he is a killer musician. I've seen him tell some really cool stories online. My favorite one is how he started playing a very difficult concerto after a very small time of practicing the guitar, which makes me want to be so happy. But he's studied with a bunch of killer players. I'm really excited for tonight. Tariq Harb, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here, man. I really appreciate it. Awesome.
So you have had quite a background, and you're killing it right now.
It's not the usual path,
Right.
because I
But
started. I mean, it's been a long story. We can get into it right away.
yeah, well, what I like to ask people is, if it wasn't for the quarantine, what would you be doing these days?
Well, I'd be touring. I'll be in Jerusalem, and I'll be first time going into kind of Palestine, Israel, even in the Israeli part to play some concerts there for the Arab Israelis there, and they're doing a great job to bring both sides to the table and making orchestras, like with the Divan Orchestra with Daniel Barenboim. He's doing that on a larger scale in Germany. And there are many people who are taking part into bringing both communities together to make music. So I would have been adjudicating the competition that's happening in Jerusalem, which brings both communities together, and playing some concerts there, also playing concert in Jordan, also doing the festival in Montreal, which, by the
Right.
way, my colleague Patrick Kearney is,
Yes.
it's his baby. So we'll be doing the Montreal International Classic Guitar Festival and competition. And I would have been playing the Concerto de Aranjuez with the orchestra that I first played with, the Orchestra Symphonique de Lille. So, I mean, so many things got canceled, but
Yeah.
hey, I mean, they got postponed in my mind.
What would you have been doing in Jerusalem? Like solo concerts,
So
other
solo
than the
concert and
yeah.
adjudicating the competition. So the competition goes between Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Bethlehem. And so I'll be just commuting between those and looking at the guitar sector there, adjudicating the guitar sector.
What can we get an exclusive sneak peek into the program? Can we know one piece on your program?
Well, I've been composing recently. I haven't had the best time recently because my mother passed away in
Oh,
December.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was really tough because my mom was really my backbone, so to
Yeah.
speak. She was the one that really pushed me forward in the music world. She was the, not I want to say the only one that supported me and my family. All my siblings did, but my mom was really the one that gave me the opportunity to travel and study abroad. I had some issues traveling abroad. In my family, we all were taught to just, seek the best schools wherever they are. All my siblings went to Ivy Leagues and so on, and I wanted to study abroad, and I wasn't the I wasn't the most the brightest. I was a bright kid, but I was not very cooperative in high
Right.
school. So,
Right.
so my grades did not represent my
That
my intellect.
that's not that is a very common thing among guitarists. I mean, you would think that's a rock guitarist trait, but classical guitarists are. You'd
I
be
mean,
surprised how many people I talked to that said that they did poorly in high school.
I was not playing classical guitar back then. I
Yeah.
played a
Yeah.
little bit rock and roll. I played a little bit violin. Yeah, violin. I left it even before hitting teens.
Right.
But yeah, so my mom was like, okay, you want to go to Canada? Like, yeah, I'll support you.
Mm.
So,
And
so
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Amman, Jordan. I'm originally from Jordan. Yeah, with Palestinian roots. So
Mm-hmm.
both my
Mm-hmm.
parents, they met in they met in Palestine, but they also studied in Lebanon when
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
thriving before the civil war there. And beginning of the 70s, I think around 71 or so, they moved to Jordan. And I was born in the 80s, beginning 81. So I was born in Amman, and
Okay.
that's where I'm
Yeah.
from.
And so did you have did were
So
any
just
of your,
back to the thing. One piece of the program is a composition of mine. So
oh, sure,
we can
sure.
talk about that after.
No, you had me wrapped in your story so much. I was going to ask you about Jordan.
Sorry, yeah, go
Um,
ahead. Go ahead. Let's go step by step. Yeah, sorry.
no. What, it doesn't matter. Um, did you have a lot of, what was it like? Well, let me set this up a little bit. What were your musical experiences at home? Were you a kid that liked to grab things and mess around with them, or did people encourage you to do stuff? Did you have role models when you were younger playing music?
Well, I have an uncle in the States where we used to travel a lot to Los Angeles, and my first cousins, which are Nicole and Noelle, and the four girls that always they liked rock and roll a lot. So whenever I go, I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, and they take out this album, Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses. That's the
Oh,
first.
I know that one.
That's the
Don't
first introduction to
don't be
guitar.
fooled by the fingernails.
So that was my first introduction to guitar, believe it or not, which is which is great. I mean, to my mind, it's great, but I mean,
Yeah.
in the classical sense, it would be terrible,
Well,
But we always had opera at home, so
yeah. Okay. Okay.
so yeah,
Yeah.
so then that give me credit for that. My
I
father
wouldn't.
listened to a lot of opera, and
I feel like there's so many things. Maybe we'll talk about this later. There's so many things that cross over between the two genres, and I feel like almost everyone gets into, not almost everyone, a lot of people get
get
into
into it.
classical guitar after experimenting with other styles. So, and I think there's wonderful things that cross over, but we'll get into that later. So you're young, you have these cousins that love
That
Guns
love
N'
rock and
Roses.
roll, love Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose, Slash, Duff McKagan, all these like this
Hmm.
whole kind of not so much the glam rock,
Yeah.
so a bit of Metallica, a bit of that, and then I just got into it. My brother was playing guitar at the time, and he was showing me some chords, and apparently, I mean, he's telling me like a few months later, I was just teaching him basically,
It's
just
awesome.
play some chords and shift between chords. I was getting very good at it, and I like it was all on electric.
Hmm. Hmm.
So as a kid, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and then to form the band with my friends, it was funny because nobody played anything. So I taught the drummer how to do this. I taught the bassist how to do this. It's just like, this must be obvious. Let me show you how.
I mean, that's not. What is the story of that David Gilmour from Pink Floyd taught Roger Waters how to play a bunch of bass lines because Roger Waters couldn't figure it out. I mean, that happens all the time. That's
Satriani,
why.
Steve Vai.
Oh,
Also,
wow. That's a
yeah. I
that's
mean,
a whole nother. That's
Steve
a
Vai
whole
started,
nother.
right?
What's that?
That's how Steve Vai started, apparently. The legend
That
goes,
is, yeah.
knock on Satriani's door and tell him, teach me, please. Show me how you do your thing.
Those guys are. I'm just looking at a wall I have over here. Well, I'm not going to turn it, but
Yeah,
I'll show you later. I have a wall of my rock guitar legends that I've met, little signed pictures.
amazing.
Um, so what was your musical experience
So yeah,
after that flame was sort of lit? I mean, I don't know what the education system is like in Jordan. Were you able to pursue instruments and instrumental education in school?
none of that. No, we didn't really have. We had just a bit of choir. We had a bit of singing after, with the piano teacher, sort of just playing the tune and we sing with him, sort of thing. And it wasn't, the music class was not comprehensive. It was just sitting there and listening to him doing some scales and we singing with him. He's showing us the treble clef a little bit. I mean, I barely remember learning any of that because when I came to classical guitar after, I didn't know how to read notes.
Right.
So notes were out of the question. I was doing some tabs on the guitar,
Hmm.
and I learned violin as a kid for a year and a half.
Okay.
So that opened my mind to accepting classical in a different way, just understanding, like playing with a choir, and we were doing like with the orchestra, kind of violin orchestra, and we used to go to Jarash, which is like an ancient Roman amphitheater city in Jordan, and we used to have concerts there, and the royal family would come and see the kids play, and so that was very active as kids. It
That's
was the
cool.
Queen Noor National Music Conservatory. It
Mm.
was booming at the time, and all kids were encouraged to participate. And I saw this one concert. I went with my mom again, and I see this kid. He's like 5, 6 years old, and he's doing that. And I tell my mom, I want that. I want that.
Yeah.
So she takes me to the conservatory, enrolls me in violin lessons. Of course, I know nothing. I remember I hated it because I didn't have a shoulder rest. So it hurt a lot here. And my teacher's telling me, you got to put it on your collarbone. I'm like, but it hurts. But
Yeah, yeah.
so then I quit. I mean, I stopped once I met Axel and Slash, I'm like, for the violin. So I stopped going to the conservatory and I just started just like on my own, really on my own. Everything
Yeah.
was as a kid. There was
So,
no real music education. There was no real program or anything like that.
So you said, just skipping ahead a little bit, you said that you were always encouraged to look for the best school, and you found a school that brought you to Canada. Was that your undergrad, or did that come later?
That was my undergrad, exactly.
And so,
I mean, my parents would have wanted me to be a doctor or an engineer
right.
or a lawyer, but my grades did not live up.
I like how honest you are about it.
So they're like, okay, you go do finance.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. I get into the finance program, Concordia, and that's what brought me to Canada.
Right.
And from then on, I mean, more than half of my life now I've been in Canada, so I'm literally more Canadian than Jordanian.
So I remember reading this actually, and I saw this an interview you did a couple years ago. So you studied finance, but didn't you also study violin at like a higher degree, not a degree from school, but a higher level before you found the nylon string guitar?
Yeah, exactly. Because I did another undergrad in violin performance. That was after I graduated from finance, and I was working with Royal Bank here, Royal Bank of Canada, and I worked with Investors Group as a financial advisor for 6 months. And I was always like, because I had a French girlfriend at the time from Paris, and she was obsessed with Paganini. I didn't know who Paganini was. We were in a music store, and I pick up a violin and show her like a bit of pizzicato, showing her that I know a bit of violin. It's just like, okay, there, tough guy. Do you know Paganini? I'm like, who the hell is that?
Is that a dish? Is that a
dish? Yeah, exactly.
That sounds delicious.
So she tells me, like, you have to do your research. Go listen to Paganini if you like the violin.
So you went back to school?
So then I discovered Paganini, and
Yeah.
and through that I discovered Bach, and my whole world flipped. And I was, what am I doing here? Finance, a mutual fund advisor. I don't know what. What am I doing?
It's violin music.
Yeah, the partitas and sonatas always like this with the Walkman and the thing, and I'm going with a suit, going to the financial advising job.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? This is it. Like, I'm gonna go buy a violin.
Yeah.
And I started doing tabs violin, 4 lines, like a bass guitar.
Sure.
And then I found a teacher, and I went with him with the tabs. Eine kleine Nachtmusik, Mozart, tablature. He's like, never do that ever in your life.
You like? Do you have the tabs for the chaconne?
I wasn't that advanced.
Oh my gosh.
So I enrolled with this violin guy.
Yeah.
Who was in La Salle, like the next town, which is also considered as Montreal nowadays. And I was getting better, and we started doing the double concerto by Bach. We did the concert. And since then I was like, okay, I really can do this. I'm going to enroll again.
How old were you?
I was there. I was 20. Well, I finished finance at 23. I worked for a year and a half. I was about 25. Just hit 25. And I'm like, I'm going to just stop the business and, just do the music, like go at it. I was so passionate, so passionate about it.
But then you did something weird because you switched instruments.
Yes. Now, while I had 6 months to prepare for the audition for the violin, so passionate, like because I became against the electric guitar, right?
Right.
I became against like electricity even. Like, I don't want to hear dance music. I don't want to hear amplified guitars. Right. I don't want to see computers.
Practice by candlelight.
I want violin, bow. That's it.
Yeah.
Horses. I don't want cars. I became that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I became crazy.
Yeah.
With how the old ways were.
Yeah.
So I did the audition and I got in, And I was just like the kid that's just wanting to suck all the information out
Mm-hmm.
of the teachers, Even
Mm-hmm.
I remember at the audition after I finished, I'm like, so am I in? Like, gotta wait for the letter, man. Like, step aside.
So you went back to Concordia,
Exactly. I went back to Concordia.
and what was the music program like there? Because you had only known it in terms of a finance school, right? A
Yes,
business school.
exactly.
So for all you knew, this could have been like the best program or the worst program in the world, right?
Exactly. I didn't care. It was another campus. The thing is,
Yeah.
Concordia has two campuses, one in downtown and one in Loyola, which is in NDG outside of downtown Montreal.
Right.
But it's actually like a kind of like an American campus.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of enclosed. There's the football field. There's the whole green grass and the
Sure.
chapel.
Sure.
So it's much more than a downtown kind of campus with buildings. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was like you're going to this kind of fantasy world to me, it seemed. I always loved going there. It was the whole fine arts was there back
Okay.
then. Before now, they moved it downtown. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. But so I was going there and I was just loving it. There was orchestra, there was string quartet. I could do choir if I wanted, and I was learning the notes. I was in Music 200. I didn't know like what's
Right.
solfege, nothing. I forgot it, like from finance or
Mm-hmm.
from from the violin days as a kid.
Sure. Sure.
Completely forgot it. So it was great to be at Concordia because they allow people who are not so versed in music world yet,
Mm-hmm.
or who are not so advanced, to actually have undergrad experience in music. So I was lucky with
Yeah,
that.
no, absolutely, absolutely. So, but it sounds also like it's kind of a good school. I mean, just by the guitar teachers,
Yeah.
I know that has a serious program, but a lot of times what I talk about with a lot of the guitarists that I've talked to so far,
Mhm.
for classical guitar, we don't typically discover it until much later. And so sometimes that leads to us enrolling in places not knowing, well, when you go initially, you're only 18, 19 years old. You don't really have a good idea of what a good school is. But a lot of times our first school is all luck, right?
Yeah.
And so I've talked to a lot of people that said, "Yeah, my first school was okay, but the real education happened in my master's. The real education happened, in the DMA, in the artist diploma." But it sounds like that's a strong program.
It was a great program for its diversity. So if I wanted to be in a jazz combo, I could on the violin. If I wanted to be in the orchestra, I could. I didn't have to just stick to performance. If I wanted to learn about Nijinsky ballets, and take history, music history, then yes, I could. That was the strong point of Concordia, and that's what I needed. I
Yeah,
needed to
yeah.
kind of spread my tentacles everywhere and see really what I like, you know. So I did some jazz compos. And then I did a composition class, and the teacher was Roddy Elias, who retired from Concordia a while back, and now he's based in Ottawa. And he always brought his Humphrey to teach us counterpoint, and I was blown away by the sound. And he had a nice tremolo. He had really refined sound, and I'm like, okay, I play guitar, like I could do that too.
Right. Yeah.
So I went and I begged the dean at the time, Rosemary Mountain. I told her I really want to do classical guitar also. She's like, I'm sorry, we can't. Each student has one instrument. I come back next week. I really want to do classical guitar. I'm sorry, like I can't get it out of my mind. I'll be the best student you have, I promise. And then she allowed me.
You were this. It's so funny, like that you did the finance stuff before, because the way you're talking, like this is a crazy musician. Like this is a typical like enthusiast.
Fired up,
Yeah.
and like
So she said you could do both
private
instruments.
private study basically in
Okay.
classical guitar and violin. So I had Clemens Merkel from the Bozzini Quartet,
Yeah.
who they're really specialized in modern music. So that opened my mind onto the whole contemporary stuff. And Roddy was a kind of more of a traditional guitarist slash jazz guitarist.
Okay.
So he was kind of an improviser, kind of like Roland Dienz, if you think,
Mm-hmm.
a type of musician. So he composed, he improvised. Yeah, he had incredible sound on the guitar, and he
Mm-hmm.
played everything. He just loved playing the classical. He just loved the instrument. So I started with him, Yamaha C40 in his studio once a week. He's telling me how to grow the nails, how to sit. I hated the sitting position. It was a nightmare, man. And slowly but surely, I started really getting, the essence of the classical guitar and understanding the whole role of how the polyphonic instruments work. I had no idea. I had no idea at all.
It's interesting too because the guitar, you're saying your composition teacher was demonstrating counterpoint on a guitar, which a guitar can do really well, but is one of the hardest things to do on the guitar, period, is to play counterpoint and to play it well. Because, I mean, from my limited experience playing classical music on the piano, I mean, it's just a whole other beast on the guitar.
Of course.
You have to think of each finger as an independent universe, and then especially when you hear people like, I can't think. I think Oscar Gilia does it in one of his albums. Colors a note differently. In like a fugue, he'll like A will be brighter than I, and like to add that to counterpoint too. That's insane, right? To think about doing that. But it's absolutely wonderful. So you discover the classical guitar.
So then I started doing the exams.
Yeah.
Classical guitar, violin. I was much better at the violin. Play all Bach violin, never touched Bach on the guitar. But then I said, okay, Roddy told me like you should get into the RCM syllabus. You should learn the repertoire. So I went and bought all the grades and I went through them like, I don't know, maybe in a month or something crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just practice a lot. And I saw that the guitar was kind of taking my attention more.
Sure.
The strings are becoming green on the guitar, not on the violin.
Do they get green on the violin?
They do. I mean, when you're sweating and when you're going at it hours.
Oh, because they're metal. I'm thinking of the coils, but no, it's because they're metal. Yeah.
They're metal, yeah. Well, I used to never change strings. I mean, I wasn't this refined musician or whatever. I was just like going at it, literally. Like some nights, the sun would set like that. Let's say I'm practicing. The sun would rise. I'm still practicing. It's crazy. I got the cup so many times in my place. It was so funny. The janitor in my building, he agreed to open the swimming pool downstairs so I can go practice downstairs, where there's nobody and nobody can hear me.
That must have sounded great.
Amazing for the violin. For the guitar, It became a bit too moist.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best.
But
for violin, it was fantastic.
Wow, that's really cool.
So basically, I did both instruments throughout my undergrad. It happened to be that way towards the end. And before I graduated, I was always playing with this community orchestra, the OSI in Montreal. And that's when they were looking for a guitarist to play the Aranjuez. And I went to the conductor. I told him, like, he was saying, like, hey, okay, we're doing the Aranjuez next season. If you guys know any guitarists, like, let them contact me. We're doing auditions in June or whatever the time was. And I told him, I'm a guitarist, by the way. He's like, just sit down, man. Like, we need you as a violinist. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I swear, but I'm also a guitarist. Like, I can do this. He's like, well, if you really want, we have auditions. So come to my place and we'll audition you. So
did you know the piece before you said, oh yeah, I could do this?
I knew the second movement.
Dude, come on.
I knew the second movement. I heard the dun, 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 dun. That was familiar.
Yeah.
The intricacies and the whole everything about the piece, the orchestra part, of course, I'm clueless.
So you had been playing, not when you performed the Aranjuez, but when you heard about this opportunity and were like, I'm gonna jump on this. How long had you been playing guitar?
Kind of like a year and a half.
So like at a year and a half, I could probably play scales at like 85.
I mean, classical guitar. So let's say like left hand was amazing. I mean, left hand was amazing, honestly. Probably left hand was better than now. I was just so good. I was like, it was just so natural. Right hand.
But did you ever struggle with like the crunch left hand on the guitar? Like, because I played a lot of electric guitar, and so on the classical guitar, I was always trying to not do this.
This thing, yeah. I had a bit of that. That's why I like the guitar with a thicker neck, because it stopped me from doing that.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. So because of all the barres and everything, I remember I had a lot of issues with barres, keeping them for a long time. But then I somehow I just learned to have this more circular thing from the violin, because the violin, you never really do that. At least me, I don't hold the violin like this.
Sure.
I hold it more here. So with the guitar, to do this felt very unnatural. I always felt like I would rather hug the neck rather than hold it like this.
Yeah.
So I ended up just playing more like this, and things just solved themselves
Sure. Sure.
in terms
Sure.
of left hand. Right hand,
So
I had many issues, but
who doesn't?
yeah.
I was just told on Facebook by somebody that they have a better right hand than me. See, this is funny. But
Ah,
at the time of this recording, there's a lot of stuff going on in the United States, and we won't get into it. But you know, you jump on social media and you think, okay, I'm going to stay out of trouble. And there was a post in a classical guitar community, and I was like, oh, I'll jump on this. And I like replied to the wrong person, and I was like, oh, I don't understand what your right hand problem is. Send me a picture. I'll see if I can help. And the guy's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not me. My right hand's better than your right hand. And I was like, okay. I was like, great. I'm glad. Good for you.
well,
My
you mean
right
the way
hand's
it
messed up.
looks or the way it sounds? Because
I had a picture of my hand relaxed, so I don't know how he knew my right hand was. I mean, yeah. So you go, you decide you're going to play one of the hardest pieces for. Well, I mean, it's up there. It's not the hardest, but it's
probably one of the hardest concertos, you'd say.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you decide, you know what?
I'm just gonna do this.
I'm going to do this. So what did you do? You just went home and practiced scales
So
for
I went and
24
I'm
hours a
like,
day?
yeah, I'm like, okay, I need to find guitarists that are professionals and to contact them. Just just find someone
Okay.
that can help me with this.
I'm laughing because I'm impressed.
Well, I was like, I laugh at it because I'm like, who's this
Yeah.
young guy?
Yeah.
Going at the Aranjuez, like a year and a half after picking up classical. Anyway, so I found Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't teaching at Concordia. He was teaching at Vanier. He still does.
Mm-hmm.
Vanier, which is like a cégep,
Mm-hmm.
just high school basically in Quebec. And I prepared Asturias and recorded La Alhambra or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and play for Pat. And he liked it. He was impressed actually. He was like a year and a half of playing Asturias, like, whoa, take it easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, my goal is Aranjuez. So he's like, okay, chill here. Gotta talk a lot of right hand. We gotta talk a lot, And Patrick likes to say all his stories. He talks a lot about in the lesson about his experiences. It's actually quite interesting because he studied with Alberto Ponce, and he has this kind of rich experience in the classical guitar world in France.
Mm-hmm.
So that led me to search other guitarists and how they did the Aranjuez and how they played. And YouTube was starting back then, just starting.
Yeah.
And I could really observe and learn. And I would go to his house every week in Pointe-Claire, and we would talk about, look at his nails or play his guitars.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it always sounded like too much. Like, I can't play this concert guitar, man. There's too much sound,
Yeah.
But it was a lot of personal work, obviously. And it was a lot of seeking. I wanted like a school to stick to. That was the thing that kind of was really mind-boggling for me. Like, I want sort of a method or someone to tell me like, this is how this is done. And I wanted to fit my body and fit my way of playing.
Right.
So I was going to music stores almost weekly, just looking at reading all the books, and the ones that I think might work, I would buy them. So I ran into this book called The Art of Classical Guitar Playing by Charles Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know it.
That's the if somebody is going to start classical guitar with me, that's
That changed.
Are you talking about the beginner book, the white one?
The not really exercise book. It was more like a philosophy. I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah. I do know of it, but Charles Duncan book 1 is what I go to. He's great.
Yeah. After that, I did the book 1 and everything. I thought I was a bit too advanced for that, but it was the philosophy, the way he said things, the way he described things, that really made the kind of my mind's eye see what needs to be done in order to get better. All the staccato practice.
Sure.
All this kind of the right hand positioning and the way to present the nail to the string. That's when I learned, okay, I need to use a ping pong here because my thumbnail is too flat. It's hooking. Everything started to become clearer of what needs to be done in order to play with much more ease, you know.
There's a few. See, the thing about classical guitar, and I'm sure you'll agree to some extent, is that there are some really good methods out there,
Absolutely.
but unfortunately, they're not always that easy to find if you're not in the right culture for that. And what
Absolutely.
I mean is, when I did my undergrad,
Mm.
I I had a great teacher. Chris Ladd was my teacher in undergrad. I didn't go to Hart. He was adjunct at another school,
Cool.
and he gave me a lot of really great information. But the fact that I was with other guitarists who were, you know, kind of in my position where I was studying music ed and we weren't too serious about classical guitar at that time, those weren't things that I was really getting a lot of reinforcement on. So, not to blame them or anything, but the point is that if you're in the right culture, the right teacher, the right
Environment. Yeah.
school, the right environment, you can really dig into a lot of those. And then the second thing I've noticed is that sometimes in education, and I won't say who or what, there tends to be a lot of focus on the artistry and less on how to get there, because the technique has to facilitate the artistry. If
Absolutely.
you can't play legato if you don't know how to play legato, right? Playing legato
Absolutely.
is very difficult on the guitar to do it well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was one key point for my advancement,
Mm.
is to do the opposite of staccato. So I had to master the staccato
Oh yeah,
and then delete the staccato.
right.
And that I had a beautiful legato.
As soon as you touch that string, the note dies.
That's it.
As soon as you send the string into motion, it's going to stop.
Yeah, exactly.
You have
Exactly.
to decide when to stop it.
And then I started making connections. Okay, now the wind instruments, they prepare with the tongue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The pianists, they feel the keyboard before they play.
Mm-hmm.
Violinists, the bow is on the string before you play. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
everybody does planting.
Really?
Everybody, every good
Yeah.
musician in any field, in the oud,
Yeah.
the riche, that is on the string, and they do that. You know, there's a
Oh.
feeling. There's a feeling, and I think one of the things with the left hand is that I applied that in the left hand too. You're feeling where you're going rather than
Right. Right.
looking. I mean, that's basics for guitars nowadays. Many that play as if they're sleeping, right? Because
Right.
they're feeling the instruments. And with the violin, I mean, that came natural. But in the right hand, I couldn't figure it out. Like,
Mm.
how could I just rely on it and not think about having to figure out the finger on top of the string? It was the staccato and the planting, and that was a whole game changer for me.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
It's incredible. And then I could do all the arpeggios in the Arachis, especially the third movement was like driving me
Mm.
crazy. Couldn't be there. I couldn't be ready. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So with the Charles Duncan, and then I was led to another book, which was the Natural Classical Guitar by Lee Ryan.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one.
It's more of a yoga approach. So he taught me how to breathe, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and how to handle anxiety and all that. That's a really good book if anyone's interested.
So I know,
Old school, but very good.
yeah, we, I have so many questions for you, but I want to ask a question before we move on from this period of your life. So like for me, if I were to book something, maybe not a year and a half out, but if I haven't performed the Aranjuez, I've picked at it, but I haven't performed it. If I knew that I was going to perform that in, I don't know, 6 months, I'd start to start to freak out a little bit. So what was your mindset a year and a half into this?
I just had to do the audition in 6 months. That was the
You
goal.
But you are like, that's such a, I love it. I think it's so admirable. That's such a different, I've heard so many different stories about like, oh, it was hanging over my head. You're like excited. Do you, and you have stage fright sometimes, you were saying?
Always. Before the Aranjuez, before we went on stage,
Yeah.
I was freaking out. And the conductor was doing like a boxing move.
Oh,
He always likes to do that. I don't know why
yeah.
the conductor was into that.
Yeah.
I'm like, any last thoughts, maestro? He's
Yeah.
like, just have fun, man.
That's true.
And that's it. And we
That,
went. And I was
yeah.
like freaking out. And then, okay, let's have fun. Let's do this. And it was a full hall because he apparently hired this videography team from Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a festival Argentina that he's from Argentina. And it
Mm-hmm.
was Passion en rouge et noir, like passion in red and black. And it was a festival thing in Montreal for Argentinians, and he made the concert part of that. And so he had this whole videography team. That's why I have the video,
Yeah.
like professionally shot.
And you guys are outside, is that right?
No. It was in Oscar Peterson Hall here in
Oh,
Montreal.
okay. Okay.
So he emails me. He's like, "We have a whole video team coming. No pressure."
Why did he tell you? He should have just not told you.
That made me even more fired up,
Oh my God. I'm the exact opposite. I would have collapsed into a little dust ball. Was Patrick there for the Armhus?
Was he watching? I think he was.
Yeah.
He was. I'm not sure.
So
He was.
so you studied with him until you went back to school for guitar? Or how did that work?
So Patrick, I was just doing outside of school. So I was doing
Okay.
with Adi Elias in
Mhm.
Concordia, and outside of Concordia, I was studying with Patrick. I always aimed to do that, whether it was violin or guitar, whether it was masters or undergrad.
Sure.
Except in my doctorate, I studied with Jeff. But in my master's, I studied with Gary Antonio in McGill.
Hmm.
And I also took lessons with Jerome Deschamps outside of McGill.
Okay.
So I always liked this kind of different perspective on ideas, musical ideas, and all that. I welcomed everything really, but
Yeah.
I like to see how people think of music.
So
Different people think of music. Yeah.
so you finish your undergrad or your second undergrad, and so that's in violin performance?
That's a violin performance, exactly.
And
Exactly.
so
And I was just done with the Aranjuez concert.
right.
And then I'm like, okay, violin or guitar? Violin, guitar for the masters. I don't know. What should I do? So I played violin for a week and I see
Sure.
how I feel. And then I play guitar for a week and I see how I feel. Everything was heading towards guitar.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Just the tactile feeling of playing, and also the feedback I'm getting from people, and so on and so forth.
And you're genuinely interested in how the thing works.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that has to play, if you're going to get better, you have to at least force yourself to care, but you genuinely cared about.
I was obsessed about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just cared about it. I was like a bit too much, maybe. Like,
Mm.
to be honest, I lost a lot of friends, especially from my finance days.
Well, who didn't those people?
I stopped
I'm just kidding.
getting into, I wasn't, we were a lot of going out and
Yeah. Yeah.
so on and so forth. And I decided to just stop all that.
Yeah.
We were in a gang. We were going a lot out and having fun and all that. But when I found this thing, sort of found my passion, which I've always been thinking of as a kid.
Yeah.
When I finally had the chance to do it, I decided to just cut all the BS, and just.
There's something that for me it comes and goes, but there's something that people who don't play an instrument don't understand. When you are on that roll and the guitar is calling you, being in a quiet room by yourself and knowing that you don't have another responsibility for 2 hours, 6 hours, the next day, Saturday, is to know that you can take as much time as you want with the smallest thing. If it's a phrase or if it's just the difference between two notes, people don't understand how deeply satisfying it is.
Yeah.
And we're lucky that we get to do it. I don't want to say that it's we're doing the most important work in the world, but it's such a satisfying feeling. So what was it like? Oh no, go ahead. You were going to say
No,
something.
I wanted to say that for me, art is a necessity. It's not a luxury.
Yes.
I don't think of it as a luxury. I think if art was not there, I mean, what would Italy be now? I mean, you go to Italy, there's nothing in Rome, right? If there was no art.
Grass.
If there was no sponsors towards the arts back then, you wouldn't see any art in Italy. What would it be? What would Europe be now if there was no actual support for the arts back then?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
So how did you get to your master's?
So masters, I wanted to apply right away. And I wanted to go to McGill because I knew now is the time to go to a traditional school. I wanted to go to a traditional school. In Concordia, I was not sure what I would be liking, which kind of school I would like. And Concordia offers you, many facets of music to explore, which was great. Mm-hmm. But now I wanted the rigorous training. I wanted the conservatory style.
You wanted answers.
I wanted answers, and
you wanted them now.
And I wanted them. No, and I wanted to do full recitals. you know,
Yeah.
and I wanted to play with, you know, maybe an orchestra, or I wanted to play with the advanced musicians, like really
Right.
violinists and great musicians. And I know McGill, they have a lot of scholarships going, and they have the Violon d'Or, this, they get to the best string instrumentalists, and they're very serious. I
Right.
had an idea about that. So I'm like, I'm just going to apply. So I went and I applied, and I remember Gary, after the audition, he's like, you just played the Aranjuez with the OSI, right? How'd that go? I'm like, it was amazing. He's like, yeah, fantastic. That's great to hear. And he played very well. So I kind of knew that I got in, but I was not the crazy person that was in Concordia's audition, telling him, oh, okay, so what do you think? You know, I knew the protocol, I knew the etiquette by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just wait for the acceptance letter.
Yeah. At least you learned something from your undergrad.
At least I
What
never
was?
thought I wouldn't take anything back. I mean,
I'm
Concordia
joking.
really opened my eyes, definitely.
What was the difference? I mean, I know a lot of it is going to be the same because I know who your teachers were.
Uh-huh.
But what was one of the differences, or what did you get in terms of guitar in the masters that that you needed? So I guess I'll use myself as an example. I needed refinement, and I needed a little bit of general everything, right? But for a lot of people, I mean, it's not like Patrick wasn't telling you to plant, or wasn't telling you, like I know kind of how he teaches, and it's great. So
Mm.
I know the caliber of education guitar wise was probably good, but what did you get? Like, if you could sum up the master's education experience for guitar.
I think it was something that really freed me, which was that the score is just a suggestion. You know, like especially fingerings.
Mm,
In any edition, like, you know, because I come from a violin background, so when you have David Oistrakh writing the fingerings in the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, you're not going to change the fingerings. You're not going to mess with David Oistrakh's fingerings. If you bought his arrangement, if you bought his transcription or edition, you're going to follow these fingerings because you like Oistrach's sound and Oistrach's way of playing. But Oistrakh realized back then that the score is just a suggestion, and he did his own, you know.
right,
So,
right.
so it taught me that there is a freedom in classical music, as much as any other discipline. It's just all within certain boundaries.
Sure.
Even jazz, it has boundaries,
Hmm.
you know, but it is perceived as, because you have the improv part and so on and so forth. But classical, same thing. There are boundaries, but there is a lot of freedom that you can do. That's why when I play something, sounds completely different than when you play it.
What kind of rep were you playing at your master's level? Because I'm guessing for the undergrad experience, the rep was just for fun, right? Because you
Absolutely.
you were you had to perform violin in order to
Yes,
get the piece of paper,
absolutely.
but you got to play now some
It
really
was it
heavy.
was Lute suites.
Yeah.
It was Bach Lute suites. It was Giuliani, Rossignana's Grande Overture. It was Barrios, La Catedral. It was pieces by Legnani, studies by
Hmm.
Legnani. It was much heavier rep, and it was some new repertoire that composer back then. He was young. We were both young. He's a bit younger than me. Named Haralobos Stafilakis, Harry Stafilakis.
Okay.
Great composers,
Hmm.
great composer, fantastic guitarist, and he has a heavy metal background. So he fuses classical and metal, and he wrote a piece for me, and he wrote a quintet for Patrick.
Oh, cool.
So I ended up learning the quintet and learning the piece that he wrote for me, and that was like one half of one of my recitals, which was mind blowing for me.
Mm,
So that was the rep. It was very heavy on the technical side. I was a very
sure,
technical
sure.
player
Yeah.
in the masters. All technique. Everything, you know, has to be perfect. Has to
Right.
be pristine. Has to sound like water. You know, everything has. You know, it was
Right.
very technically heavy, I'd say.
And but those are also the pieces that you mentioned. Those are also staples in the you have to play that stuff in
I
order
had to
to.
play that stuff exactly. I wanted to play that stuff
Yeah.
because when I come to, because I love teaching.
Right.
You know, I always thought that when I teach, I kind of remind myself of what needs to be done. You know, so in
Mm,
a way, I'm teaching myself, and I saw that firsthand with the violin too. Like,
right.
okay, bow grip. Like we used to do a little smiley here for the kids. You know, so when they do the bow grip like this, the smiley is sad.
He looks sad.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have to do this so the face smiles, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so that it reminds me when I'm playing and I'm going
Mm,
at it not too tense here, you know. So I saw, okay, well, if I'm going to teach the Grand Overture, I need to play it.
yeah,
I need to
yeah.
know it inside out. You know? So that's partly why I went for the classics, if you may.
I um I played the Grand Overture for my one of my master's recitals, and I kind of felt like I don't know. I wish I had played more classical era music before playing that piece because I feel like technically there was so much going on that I wasn't able to focus on a lot of the musical elements.
On musical elements, yeah.
And so I saw Jason Vio play this place in Massachusetts at Amherst College actually, and he plays the Grand Overture, and it's
I love this
perfect.
version.
It's
I love it.
perfect and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And there's a meet and greet after, and I go, hey, thanks. He signs my thing, and can I ask you a question? I go, how do you work on those? How do you get those MIPs? Because I'm really struggling with those MIPs. And he's like, yeah, man, I don't know. I just do them. It's like, okay, thank you.
Honest, that's a prodigy answering.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. He's obviously gone through the steps, but I think
Obviously,
for him, he's been doing it for so long, he probably doesn't have to, worry about how it's going to
literally
get
think
there.
about it. Yeah, but
Yeah,
Jason's a great teacher. So as you said, I'm sure
he's a
he
wonderful teacher.
knows
Yeah,
exactly what he's doing.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, so I would love to talk about your. So you mentioned Barrios, and you won a Barrios competition, right?
And the Barrios competition, yeah, that
Yeah.
was during my doctorate. Yeah, that was
Okay.
when Jeff told me, like, man, just go do competitions. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, I hate it. I'm not gonna compete. Like, I'm not into that stuff. Like, I don't like going and proving something to someone. Like, he's like,
S-
no, don't prove anything to anyone. Just go
Yeah.
and learn. Like, go from a learning perspective. Meet people. Meet. He really made the thing kind of softer.
Mm,
Jeff, you know.
yeah.
That was a violin competitions, Queen Elizabeth competition, you know, the Tchaikovsky competition. It's all very serious, man. And there's so many musicians. It's the guitar world is like nothing compared
Yeah.
to the violin world. It's so small.
Mm,
What do we have? Like maximum 70 contestants, maximum.
yeah.
You're talking the hundreds, you know,
Yeah.
if not more. They get a lot of applications, and it's crazy competitive. So I was never ever gonna do that. I was always gonna stick to my Bach and to the simplicity of music and
Mm,
how beautiful it could be, how it moved me. I always stuck to that. I didn't want to prove anything to anyone, you know. But
right.
Jeff told me it's not about that, man. It's about you actually getting better.
Yeah.
You actually topping yourself, you know, getting better than what you were, and so
It's a
on. So,
very wise answer.
yeah, and it opened my mind. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the Montreal competition. That was the first competition that I ever did. And
How'd
then
you
I
do?
called Jeff. Jeff, I made the semifinal. Yeah, awesome. Then I called Jeff. Jeff, I made the final. Way to go, man! And then Jeff, I got number one. Awesome.
What did you play?
I was playing the Antonio Jose sonata, and I was playing the Napoleon Coste Le Départ,
Hmm.
Fantasy Dramatique, and I was playing the BWV 908. So
Okay.
played for Allegro.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my rep. Yeah.
That is an incredible piece of music. I played that one too. You know,
Incredible.
I that's one of the pieces. That piece taught me a lot about myself. I studied it for a long time, but that's one of the pieces that because I tried to record it along with all these other pieces, and that was
Awesome.
that the prelude, not the fugue, but the prelude itself was like, or it may have been the Allegro. It was a long time ago. Where I was playing it, and I was like, you know what? I need to know more about a piece before I record it.
Yeah,
So,
especially
so my hour long CD turned into a 45-minute CD, but I'm happy with what it is. Um,
oh, is that your first album? Was that your first?
yeah, that's the first and only one so far. Yeah, it's the Sonatina Meridionale and Ophelia by Philip Houghton.
Fantastic.
It was a great time. So can we talk about your doctorate
Yeah. So,
because
I mean,
Jeffrey McFadden
Jeff,
is
I met him in
is
Italy. So I was
yeah.
doing the Festival Mediterraneo, the one that
Mm-hmm.
run by Solo Duo, if you know Matteo and
Mm-hmm.
Lorenzo.
I know of them.
Yeah, I remember. I'm not sure how I got to know about it, but I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to Italy. So we
Why not?
went to Cervo, little town. I don't know if you ever been to that festival back in the day. It's
No,
not there
I've
anymore.
I've been to Italy twice, but not for music reasons.
Yeah, Cervo, it's kind of north of Italy, close to Milan, very close to Nice,
Hmm.
actually. So I went there, and that's where I met Jeff. Took a few lessons with him, and I really liked the way he taught. And he's like, you can apply if you once you finish your masters if you feel like continuing.
Where does he
Like,
teach again?
sorry,
Where does he teach?
at the University of Toronto,
Okay, okay.
short U of T, we say.
Hmm.
You know.
Hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll finish the masters and apply, and I did. I went to the audition. I remember in February, met Jeff, and I played the PFA.
Hmm.
And the Nocturnal. I remember
Mm.
Britain's Nocturnal, yeah.
Love
And
that piece.
yeah, he looked happy, and I got in. I got in. It
Yeah.
was great because U of T, really supports the DMA students with
Mm.
a scholarship and all that. And you get some TA work, which is fantastic. I mean, that was really the thing that taught me so much about conducting ensemble,
Hmm.
doing a performance class, and
What
then
was
seeing Jeff how he did things. It was just a
Yeah, how did
fantastic,
that's what I was going to
fantastic
ask. Like, what does he bring to the table? Because what I know from him is, um, I know he's, first of all, he's always busy. He's always doing stuff,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's one hell of a technician. And I don't mean he's not musical. I mean, like, if anybody's gonna, when you see a score and you're like, there's no way anybody plays it like that. Like, he'll play it like that
Yeah, he
because
played
he
like that.
can.
Yeah.
And but I love his playing. I love his sound. What is it like studying with him? What did he bring to the table?
I mean, Jeff was really kind of, you know how when things are dark and you put a flashlight on them, suddenly you see everything.
Mm,
Jeff is like that. So let's say you have a problem with the fingers not working, he'll tell you exactly what you need to do and where the problem is originating from. So your mind starts doing stuff to just
yeah.
like go and do things a little better.
What were some of those things? Can I ask?
For me, it was the tone. Really, I had a more edgy tone.
Hmm.
It was nice. It felt very quick, so to speak. But I did not have the lush tone. I always went to the lesson. I'm like, Jeff, how do you do the tone like that, man? Like this is crazy.
Right.
It's like creme brulee with tiramisu.
Right.
It's
Right.
like
Right.
really really rich, and you can tell each note. And he's playing. He has a guitar that he hangs in his office like that.
Mm,
It has a little loop on it, and he hangs it like this. I don't know. It's like an aria guitar or something.
sure.
And he's
Sure.
getting this fantastic sound out of it. And that was when we went into the whole nails thing and how to kind of file the nails.
Sure.
'Cause I was oblivious to that. I was just filing however I felt made the playing easier.
Right.
But he taught me to find that plus the release point being gentle so that you have
Mm,
a lush sound as well. So it was in the sound and it was really in the interpretation. Because I'm such a fiery person, I end up having interpretations that are very quick, almost like can't digest the music because everything's happening so quickly.
mm. And so
Jeff,
he slowed you down.
he slowed me down. Yeah.
And so musically, I love this idea of the flashlight. Musically, what did you find? If we can ask that
Musically, I
question.
mean, because Jeff, he had the pedagogy class, he had guitar history class, he had the ensemble class, he had performance class, and we had private study. So although I was in DMA, I wasn't doing all these classes,
Mm,
but I was getting sort of by osmosis, if you may, from the other students and from Jeff during private study, all that knowledge, whether it's about Giuliani, Carulli, Carcassi, all these, heavyweights in the guitar world,
yeah.
which I did
Yeah.
not really know about so much. Jeff had some insider information about all these composers and the works and the works behind them. And he had, his teacher was also Norbert Kraft,
Hmm.
and there was Eli Kastner also in Toronto. So it was, as you said before, the environment
Yeah.
is what really made me kind of know really where things are coming from and how things are done,
Yeah. Yeah.
technically speaking and musically speaking. So for example, agogic accents in Baroque
Sure.
playing, I was
Sure.
oblivious to that. I didn't know what that. I
Yeah.
didn't know that an accent can be a time accent, not a dynamic
Not
accent.
a yeah.
You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? So
Absolutely.
so things like that, Jeff, just opened my mind, and I started listening to harpsichord players, and I noticed, okay, that's their expressive tool,
Mm.
is they play with time in such a way that it just keeps the structure solid while making it very expressive. So it was in
For
that sense.
That makes a lot of sense. For me, a lot of that stuff was difficult because it changes period to period.
Yeah.
So something, something that would be considered an ornament,
Mm.
in Bach, it would be written out in Giuliani, would
Yeah.
be improvised in, uh, I don't know,
In
Ponce,
Dowland,
right?
Dowland
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of these things for me, it was hard to decide what was appropriate to what extent, where. I remember, I won't name the guitarist, but I had this wonderful masterclass from a GFA winner, and I played the prelude to the PFA, and he said, just put ornaments on places that you like. And I was like, okay. And I went along with it, and it was a fun masterclass. And the piece sounded terrible. And I went back to my teacher, Chris Ladd, and he goes, okay, how did that go? I was like, yeah, I had a masterclass. Oh, cool. What'd you play? The prelude. What did he tell you to do? Just put ornaments on it. Why? I don't know.
Ah, so there was no reason.
There's no reason. I mean, he's a fun guy. The guy I had the master class with.
You
But
see,
that's
yeah.
go ahead.
No, but see, with Jeff, there was a reason
Yeah,
for what he's trying to tell me. It's
of
not
course.
just because of pure whim or because he likes it or because people are doing this today. There
My
was a
the other
historical background.
Of course. Oh, of course, yeah.
So it was very informative in that sense, which I did not delve into so much in Miguel because, as I told you, I was very much into technique,
Right. Yeah.
just how to do things in the most efficient way. And when I wake up, I don't want to warm up. I just
Right.
want to do it. So
Same. Same.
yeah, so it was tough though to slow down
Mm.
at U of T, but that made me a much more mature player. It was actually fun to listen to finally, because I always listen to my McGill recitals. I'm like, yeah, technically it's great. Like this guitar is fantastic, but
Mm.
I'm not getting goosebumps.
Right.
I'm not getting shaken to my core. Like how
Right.
when I hear Itzhak Perlman play the violin, for example,
Oh,
you know, or hear Rostropovich or any of these great players that there is technique, it's pristine, but there is sort of like a gravitas to the music that you can't
right.
help but like you want to tear yourself apart,
Sure.
because
Sure.
it's just done in such an eloquent way, and I think that's what I learned by far. That was my U of T.
Who were some of your favorite players to listen to for the guitar?
For the guitar, I mean, I don't like to name names so much, but I mean, of course, I love John Williams. I love Julie. I mean, Julian Ream was the top for me musically because he took me to a different time whenever I listened to him.
Yeah.
I was like kind of like transported. So, for example, if I'm listening to him playing Spanish music, I would be transported to like a desert kind of area. I'm from Jordan, so I'm very familiar with that kind of landscape. And the sweat going down, I'm
Mm.
smoking a cigarette, or whatever,
Yeah.
And
That's
that
awesome.
that 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 smell, that feeling, I hear it in Julian Ream's playing.
Yeah.
It drove me nuts how he does that. I couldn't until now. I don't know how he does it. But I admired him so much for that until this day. Some of the young guys, I would say Florian Larousse is probably one of the top musicians for me.
Mm.
Florian Larousse, yeah, he has something special in terms of phrasing. I mean, they're all great, but
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about Bream, and I have a similar story to that. Um, but what I'll share is that Bream, to me, when I first started, was so interesting because of the videos that I saw and how he sat and the faces he made and how he moved his hand. Why did he move his hand from here to here? And then there was a period of time where I was like, yeah, well, it's Bream. He's going to play it like that. And now I listen to Bream and I go, that makes sense why he goes from, a neutral color to a very metallic color. That makes sense why he does it. I'm not going to do it like that much. I'll do maybe a little bit of, but it makes sense, and you kind of understand the
where he's going.
choices that he made, and they're good choices. Like, I might not agree with them all the time, but in general, I mean, he's a god.
Absolutely, absolutely. He's a classical guitar painter. I would say, like he paints the music
Absolutely.
right in
Absolutely.
front of you. The landscape is so clear. You
Yeah.
feel it, you hear it, you see it, you're in it. that's what Julian Bream does for me. You know, he's one of those musicians. Like also, I always refer to violinists because those were the ones that played the great music. You know, like Beethoven, like Bach, like Brahms. With this music, I basically musically I grew up with that type of music. You know, and hearing those musicians take you to that era or to that feeling or to that almost like kind of smell the rosin or smell the bow hair or you know that's what Julian Bream does to me. I smell the French polish almost or the cigar kind of smell inside the guitar, you know, because it's the wood, you know.
Love that smell. It's the
Yeah,
best
you know,
smell.
you know what I mean. So that's there's something about it. I don't know what it is. I think it just taps into memories,
Yeah.
and that's why you kind of associate smells. Probably, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I think it does kind of open some boxes that are in your mind already.
Sure. That is very fitting and very real. It's a very real experience to just think about.
Yeah.
There's some pieces, there's some players, there's some. I mean, sometimes it happens when you visit a place you've never been to. I have had this experience a lot in Italy when I went.
Where in
But
Italy? You just
the
all
the
around?
first time, well, the first time we went to, the first time we stayed in a little village right outside of Orvieto.
Uh huh.
And then that was when we did like the whole. We went to we were there for a long time with my aunt, and we ended up we were very lucky to go to spend a week. I think we were there for like 3 weeks, and we drove for like 5 days, going back and forth, going to Rome, spending the day in Rome, and then we did like Pisa. We did all that stuff, but one of the experiences that I had, and I'm not a religious person at all, at all.
I mean,
We went to the not Vatican City. Is it St. Peter's Basilica right outside of
ah,
Vatican City?
yeah, yeah.
And there's the statue, the sculpture of Mary holding Jesus. It's got to be one of those. It's got to be one of the Italian guys, Da Vinci. I don't know who it must have been.
Okay.
And it's at a marble, and it's one of those experiences that you mentioned with Bream, where you see it, and for some reason, and I don't know why, it just puts pieces of your life into perspective in a way that you didn't think you were going to be touched like that, right? And it does something to you, and I think it had to do with the fact probably that everything in Italy is so big, right? If you're going to see Jesus, and Jesus is everywhere in Italy, Jesus is 500 feet tall, right? Or you're going to see this saint or that saint, and it's enormous. But this sculpture was just it was so lifelike,
It
and it
was the
was so
sculpture that brought memories
yeah,
in
and
your own personal life. You mean like?
it was just a nostalgic feeling, a very deep nostalgic feeling, and it wasn't a specific memory of, oh, this is me being young and thinking about God. It was just a highlight in my life, that if you're reading an ebook and you put the little bookmark up at top, that for some reason that moment. And I feel like that was very similar when you were talking about Bream.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it just does something to you. Whenever you hear it, you get at least a glimpse of that. And if you are open enough and not so busy with your mind, you might
Yeah.
actually go to that exact space. You know,
Speaking of Italy, you've played a lot of Italian music,
I played a lot of Italian music. Yes,
which is great because Italy is the best.
absolutely.
Um, you have a number of Italian guitar music publications, but the most recent one is a Carcassi album and
Yes,
DVD. Is that correct?
yes, absolutely,
Could
absolutely.
you can you tell me about that?
Well, it started all with the SOAR studies by Segovia, which I once felt that I had to go through, just so I know the repertoire, just so I learn what SOAR was after. You know, at least with those kind of, I did it like a homage to Segovia sort of thing. So I stuck to the 1 to 20 that Segovia numbered, and I did a whole educational DVD about it. And that's when I realized that this actually, from the feedback that I was getting, also that this actually helped a lot of people go over the basics of guitar, because I do not just the studies. In order to do this, you have to revise this kind of fingering or this kind of hand position or do this kind of planting. So it's a kind of also incorporates a lot of technical things. So it ended up being like an educational DVD that is sort of intermediate to early advanced in terms of technique. And then I'm like, okay, well, the next step would be, first, because I've never done them before. Second, because they're a little bit more challenging, would be the Carcassi Opus 60.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that Carcassi has so many other pieces, larger pieces, kind of like Giuliani,
Yeah.
that are sort of unheard of. He was sort of like overshadowed by Corulli and Giuliani
Yeah. Yeah.
at the time. So he was great. I mean, he was known for his virtuosity, known for his playing, but we somehow know him best just for his Opus 60. We don't really know his other works.
He also didn't know how to hold the guitar.
Yeah, with the pillow, right? Yeah. That's it. Now there's a famous picture of him, like just he has the foot propped up on a pillow or something, which is really not so effective, right?
One of my grad school classes, we had to compare and contrast the different method books and decide which one had which strengths and which weaknesses. And I remember as soon as we discovered that picture of Carcassi, it was over.
But then, like studying those studies,
Yeah.
I noticed how Carcassi was so meticulous with the dynamics.
Mm.
So I always hear those studies played kind of more or less flat.
Sure.
Then I noticed like
As
these
technique studies.
as a technique study, but then I noticed these dynamics. They're saying so much, and they're actually teaching me how to phrase. Like if you look at the dynamics in study 7, there is so much of this kind of swelling and kind of like not hairpins, but just like a diminuendo going.
Sure.
And it really changes. It makes the phrase a bit lopsided, which makes it a whole new way of playing it. And every study has that. And then I see study number 1 has a allegro and a staccato under it. I'm like, okay, this guy was up to something. Like he was sort of understanding that the importance of a staccato touch,
right,
in order to refine your technique. Right. And he's giving you that right at from the start, kind of like Paganini does with the ricochet in the beginning, which requires so much bow control. And it's basically a staccato study.
Sure.
So he's following a bit of the trend of what was going on at the time in Paris, Vienna, and elsewhere in Europe, where you have you had many Kreutzer studies, you had the Spohr studies that was a bit older, but anyways, they all had this staccato study in them. And I thought, okay, I could provide some unique input in this DVD or educational series.
Sure.
That might, kind of shed some new light on the work. So I decided, okay, I'll just do it. And I did my own edition with, which is, I don't have it here now. But anyways, I did my edition with right hand, left hand fingering, which
that's awesome. That's awesome.
People appreciated a lot. Yeah.
What did, because a lot of guitarists, we don't have all the time in the world. And so we focus a lot of our time on rep that we really want to play, right? And that's usually rep that is toward the upper end of our skill, right?
Yes.
So to go back and play studies that, obviously you get something from, but you don't need them. What did that do to your musicianship? Because obviously the technique and, the scales and Carcassi 1, you can play that.
Yeah.
It's nothing. But so what did that do to your musicianship now, looking back and saying, I'm going to study, this handful of studies and break them down and teach them and really understand them on a deeper level? What did that do to you as Tariq, the musician, not the technician?
I think it taught me, it first humbled me. When you start doing these studies, you notice, okay, you can do them, but can you actually play them with the bel canto style, So it was a challenge to make the simple pieces sound very interesting. So I decided, I'm going to put these in concerts. And even people like, we saw Carcassi on your program and we were like, what is this?
Yeah.
But then we heard it and it was a total different ballgame. It was actually like interesting. It was so engaging, and it put us in this mood of this kind of Italian guitar, Vienna, kind of first Viennese school.
Sure.
And that I just wanted to make it a point that even with simple music, you can make some great moments. But
Absolutely.
for me, as a as a musician, I think I learned a lot more about Kirkasi first, and I learned a lot more how they handled the guitar back then with the romantic guitar. You know? So it gave me an idea also about the overarching structure of the whole work. So you see a lot of mentions from studies, different studies, throughout the series. And in study number 25, he makes several quotes of other studies. So there is a larger arch over all the 25, progressive and melodic studies.
Sure. Yeah.
In that body work, which I didn't know. I never read that anywhere. I never knew that they had this connection. You know, so it taught me a lot about Kirkasi. I'm not sure if it taught me a lot about also, I mean, technique in the right hand, just to know what goes where. I already knew that, but just to do it so in a concentrated manner, you know, to do your own addition and all that, you have to really know it inside out.
Sure.
Because you don't want to run to it again and say, okay, I prefer this fingering now. What was I doing then? You don't want to go into that.
Right.
You want to really know it inside out so that your fingerings are legit whenever you do pick up the guitar.
You mentioned being able to put them on a program. I've noticed that with the Brouwer studies, and I guess, I mean, the Villa-Lobos preludes kind of bridge that gap because you can play them in concert, absolutely, but I would say the Villa-Lobos studies, I mean, I'm sorry, the Brouwer studies are definitely ones where you see it on a concert program and you go, are you sure? And then if you play, you know, all 20 of them, or if you play, you know, a selection of them,
10 of them or something,
and it's good, then it's like, yeah, these are really great little character pieces. And then I don't think they link up within them, but you see a lot of stuff in the Brouwer studies that you will then go see in other pieces. Like I'm trying to really, I took a stab at the Black Decameron a couple years ago, and now I'm bringing it back up, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is study.
Was it study 14 or
something like that. You see these little quotes in there.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's challenging also to present such work in a concert, like for a guitar society, especially. I do a lot of house concerts back home. So you can really play anything as long as they enjoy it. They prefer the simpler repertoire, in fact. Like, I'm not going to play the Nocturnal in a house concert in Jordan.
No.
You know, they're not going to understand it.
Right.
Not because they're not musically educated, just because it's not part of the culture.
Right.
It's not part of their, list on the radio. It doesn't come out anywhere. So for them to really enjoy it, I think you have to be a bit familiar with it, not experience it like a premiere, you know.
Sure.
So that's why I wouldn't go that far with it. I would do some of the Kirkasi, I would do some of the classics for sure, and I found that they are very inviting. You know, they make people curious about the classical guitar.
Sure.
But now with the Guitar Society, you might not put some Kirkasi stuff, but I mean, hey, why not? If you have a series of 5 of them, ordered in a smart way,
sure,
it'd be very interesting in an opening a concert.
What will a student get if they take part in your Kirkasi study education? What will they get if they? It's on a DVD, right?
It's a digital DVD now, because I was coming out to do it as a DVD, but we had the whole pandemic thing happen, so I decided to do it digital. I put it on my website.
So someone So pitch it to me.
Kirkasi. Well, Kirkasi, if you want to learn how to play guitar, you can start with those, literally. Because there is a slow version for each that I did, which I think helps people just to, first of all, learn how to play slowly. Because it's a different way to play from beginning to end.
Right.
Very slowly. And not necessarily stick. There's a click on the thing in my ear, and it's not actually audible to users. But I just do it as a reference, and I have the BPM on the screen so they can follow with me and so on and so forth. But it really teaches you, when you start playing slowly, you are all of a sudden aware of the rest of your body.
Of course.
You know, so it teaches you how to handle all other faculties, you know, such as your breathing or your posture or your shoulders or anything. So let's say there's a tough passage and you're playing it very slowly. All of a sudden, you know exactly how to shift, where to dip, and where to go back when you go back. and how the fingers need to go, and everything is just much more clear. So sometimes we don't do enough of that, I feel. And
Oh,
forcing
yeah.
myself to do every study at such a slow tempo taught me the value of playing slowly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Wonderful.
that's one, I would say, big point in the DVD. Also, I mean, each study has a kind of like a class to it, so
Mhm.
10 to 15 minutes of talking about it, and I point out all the like the challenging bits, whether it's musical, technical. I point out also common mistakes that students might go into, whether
Sure.
playing the study too fast or too slow at tempo, things like that. I think it's pretty comprehensive. And it's nice, you see the score on the screen, and it's very easy to follow.
Is there a little ball that jumps on the
There's a little
screen with a
there's
little
a little green
there's
bar
a little
that,
head,
that, that
your
moves.
head?
Yeah. That moves with each measure, you know.
That sounds awesome. I might, I'll have to check this out.
Yeah, I mean, you can listen to the performances as a CD. I decided to just put it out there
Yeah.
digitally. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Deezer.
I think it's wonderful because in a way, we're always looking for new rap and everyone's playing, this new composer XYZ, but
Yeah.
to rediscover somebody that meant so much to the community, but to discover that rep in a way that
In a new light, probably.
yeah, that really validates it for what it is, which is music. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
I was surprised that there was no kind of comprehensive right hand, left hand fingering for these
Mm,
studies. Kind of like when you look at the Eschig edition for Villa-Lobos.
sure.
It's kind of like that. It's just empty, and you kind of do. Yeah, you
Somewhere
have
over
it.
there.
You
It's
have
over
it.
here. It's upstairs. It's
Yeah,
upstairs.
yeah. So, anyways, I decided to give really like every note you can tell which right hand finger,
Sure.
which left hand finger. So that helps beginners, especially to
Do you
me.
teach them in order of appearance, or do you teach them in order of like a sequential order?
No, I teach them just one to three, just how Karkasi put
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Very, very
definitely.
cool.
Because they are progressive in a way. I mean, they're generally progressive. There's
I
some that are funny, like the placement, like number 10, with the
hmm
legato. Dun, takata, takata, dun, 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 takata.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
That's a bit kind of, if you want to think progressively, that's not really, shouldn't be
Right.
number 10. But I mean, he has some of those
Right.
sort of breaks, if you may, in the
Sure.
series, which I
Sure.
think
Sure.
is good.
Well, I'm definitely I saw that it was on Spotify, so I'll definitely give it a listen.
Oh, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is getting to be that time, and I'm gonna hit you with the lone guitarist questionnaire. Are you ready for this?
Nice. Let's do this.
If I had a good enough computer, I would superimpose a cool graphic
Uh,
and some cool music, but that's not going to do that. That's a word that we're not going to do that.
okay.
Okay, I have 5 questions for you. You can answer them in any depth that you would like. You can give me a one word answer, or you can tell me a story, whatever you'd like to do.
You
Whatever.
didn't prepare me for this, man.
No, I know. That's exactly why. I want the real raw answers.
Nice.
This is beyond this isn't TMZ, Tariq. Okay, this is real. Do they have TMZ in Canada?
No.
Oh, it's like a,
They have something similar. They have something similar in Toronto, which I
oh,
forgot the name, but
yeah.
similar to that.
It's a bad tabloid.
Yeah.
Okay, ready. Number one. What is the best gig you've had?
Best gig I've had would be probably the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam.
Mm,
So that I was invited. The guitar maker Otto Vauwinkel. He has a
okay.
series that he does in
Mm-hmm.
Amsterdam in the Concertgebouw, and I say best concert because the sound there is phenomenal. You wouldn't believe that you are playing, that you are hearing the sound that you are making. It's just phenomenal. I mean, I played in Carnegie Hall in the Vale Recital Hall.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere close to the Concertgebouw. That recital hall in the Concertgebouw literally blew my mind, and I think because of it, made a much better performance.
Mm. Have you been back there?
No, no.
What that's something to do when the world
I
opens
haven't
back
even
up.
been back to Amsterdam since.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I need to go. I need to go again for
I
sure.
hope they're probably okay right now. They know how to pass the time.
Oh yeah.
What is so now we flip to the other side of that coin. Question number two: what is the worst gig you've ever had?
Worst gig I've had would probably be, which I'm, yeah, I would. I'm ashamed to say it would be once we did a gig. I did a gig in Jordan, in
Hmm.
Amman, and it was great. I mean, the organizers were great and everything, but I had the sound guy who was in the hall there. I mean, he had no idea how to amplify anything, not just classical guitar, like let alone
Yeah.
classical guitar.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to even tweak it for voice. Like he gave me this
Mm.
Cordroid dynamic mic, and it had not a reverb, it had a delay on it. So I would play vrem, vrem, it would do it again, and I told him no.
Couldn't you shut it off on the mic? There's a little switch.
I couldn't shut off the delay. It was all up there. So I had
Oh
to
my
go like
goodness.
5 minutes before the concert. I had to go up and let one of the dudes there just strum open strings, and I tweaked the whole thing as much as I could
That's
muster
smart.
up
That's smart.
energy then.
Yeah.
And I took a photo of it because I don't want anyone to mess with it. And halfway through the concert, I went and checked on it again to see if it's the same.
Did someone mess with it?
I don't know what happened. There was a much more reverb. There was
Oh
much more
no.
reverb. There was like crazy reverb. The delay was gone because I like
Yeah.
don't turn that knob, And that just made me always self-conscious throughout the concert. And I was in a tux, and I was really looking forward to that concert. I was really pumped up because it was the organization was very respectful, and I really looked up to the people who were organizing the whole festival.
Sure.
Festival. But it was really a nightmare to have to
This
deal with sound.
this guy's like, he needs more reverb.
And he liked
I've
the
been
delay.
listening. Yeah.
He's like, because I'm playing, I was playing some Spanish repertoire, and I'm playing, there's some repeated notes.
Oh gosh.
And he's like, it sounds better, like with the delay, and he's convincing me. He's telling me it sounds better here. It sounds you do. He's telling me you can't hear it, like you can't hear it from where I am. I promise you.
Well, then how would delay help? It's just two of you.
Yeah, it was just very. I mean, I don't think it was the sound guy.
Yeah.
I think it was just some random dude.
It's just some random audience.
Just some
member.
random dude that they told him, yeah, like you have the keys to carry this thing.
Yeah, you gotta we you gotta find.
That was
you
a
gotta find
terrible.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I played anywhere close to how I could play. So, anyways.
Question number 3: what is the best advice you've gotten, and who gave it to you?
I think there are many. I've got many advices, but I can't resist to mention the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
which in the beginning sounded like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Like, do you think I'm stupid? Like, what are you talking about? But that was from Dr. Gary Antonio from McGill.
Mm-hmm.
I always came to the lesson with such complex fingering, and look what I can do, and the sweeping, and doing the trills with the sweeps and cross-string trills. I was like almost trying to invent new stuff, and he's like, man, KISS. Just
back to basics.
Simple, stupid, man. Like
yeah.
you're gonna save so much energy. You're gonna be able to put that energy in music making, not in flashy whatever stuff.
That's a good. No, that's good.
That was really helpful. That was really helpful.
When you listen to the legends, even if it's masked with really flashy skills or cool rubato or whatever, it has to be simple on some level, like when you watch Scott Tennant do a tremolo, it's so simple and it's so perfect, right? And of course there's so many things that go into that. I'm not saying just relax and you'll play a perfect tremolo, but
not really,
but it's simple. Doesn't make it easy, but it can be simple.
I think the simplicity has a reflection of beauty to it,
right?
Somehow, whether it's in nature or in playing guitar.
Sure.
Even in physics, they all look for this short, simple equation that explains so much.
Well, that's one of the ideas of counterpoint, actually. There's times where it can be very complex, but the idea itself is a very simple idea.
Yeah, you're following certain simple rules.
Right, right.
Those. Yeah.
Fantastic. Question number 4. What never fails to inspire you? It seems like you are never not inspired.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a good one. I think violin performances, violin violin concerti. They do something to me when I watch a great violinist playing a violin concerto, the whole thing beginning to end, or listening to it. My day has changed, definitely. I have a new outlook. I have a new there's a new vibe that sets in. I'm so looking forward to wake up the next day, to play, and to play maybe new rep, but there's something about violin concertos. I don't know what it is. They never fail to put me in the right musical mood, you know?
But and so actually this is not on my list, but this just made me think. You don't play a ton of violin music on the guitar, do you?
I just started, in fact, like I did an arrangement of Vivaldi violin concerto RV 230, which I loved playing on the violin, and
Mm-hmm.
I did it for solo guitar, much more simplified, the orchestra part, but still I
Mm-hmm.
can play those melodies. So I'm so excited. And
Sure.
I recently just did an arrangement of Fritz Kreisler's cadenza from Beethoven's
Mm-hmm.
violin concerto,
Okay.
which were published by Carl Fischer in 1917, I believe, and they became so famous. All violinists, if they don't want to write their own cadenza, they would just use Kreisler's.
Sure. Sure.
And those are the ones that I learned for the Beethoven violin concerto.
Mm.
And I decided to do an arrangement, and I just finished it last week, and I put up a video like a few days ago of it.
Mm.
Fantastic stuff. You know, it's very virtuosic and everything, but those themes, again, the simplicity in Beethoven
Sure.
is what makes you cry, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the crazy second movement in his Ninth Symphony with the canon.
Mm-hmm.
It's the simple melodies that he sometimes makes you almost connect with the essence of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I love playing that on guitar too. You know, it's
Yeah.
that kind of rep that I want to bring to guitar
It's
in the
wonderful.
future. I want to do some
Absolutely.
Brahms, especially a lot of Brahms. I'm crazy about Brahms.
I've always wanted to do. I forget what it is. I think it's a piano quintet actually in G minor. I know the rondo goes like the rondo's like dun 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 dun. It's super heavy metal,
You're
and I
talking about Brahms.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
and I forget which one that is, but I've always wanted to see if I could do that
200.
for four guitars or
Like there's Carlo Broschi,
mm-hmm,
Italian composer who composed for Farinelli, which was his brother, and
mm-hmm,
Castrato,
mm-hmm.
famous Castrato. And his music is just so gorgeous, man. And you
Yeah,
never hear it now.
yeah,
If you watch the movie Farinelli, Italian movie,
mm-hmm,
which was from the 80s, I believe, beginning of the 80s, you hear Carlo Broschi's music, and it's so fitting for the guitar, man. I can't tell you how much I would like to do arrangements of that. And I started some sketches, but I get sidetracked, and then I'm like, okay, no, I want to do this. And so it'll happen. It'll
yeah,
happen.
absolutely. Last question: what is a favorite or the favorite or something non-guitar related activity? You know, you do so much music, so I'm going to say non-music related activity. I'm taking out the violin. I'm sorry. What's your favorite thing to do that's not music?
I love sports. So I'm crazy about basketball. Love playing basketball. I'm crazy about running, and I'm getting into this thing called HIIT, high intensity interval training, which is like intense, man.
Okay.
You know, I'm getting so into it to
Yeah.
the point that
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out little exercises that I can put in between exercises to make it not so redundant,
Right.
you know. But I think it does something, especially the running, does something that is very healthy for me, and I'm sure for musicians in general. Like you see many musicians like John Williams, like David Russell, they're into that running thing. And I've always was a kind of track and field guy,
Mm-hmm.
basketball guy, played a bit of baseball as a kid, but basketball was something. So I really, I mean, sports is what I always say in French, sport et musique.
Yeah.
You have a perfect life, you know.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
cooking too. I love cooking. Now that we're quarantined, my wife and I were just like exploring so many different recipes and just
There's a
trying.
lot. I mean, I've definitely gained
You see, I was gonna gain
a bit
with
of
this
weight.
hit, with this hit thing that I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Only 15 minutes a day. You're done.
Because you don't have kids.
That's true.
Once I was doing so well until my son arrived, And then I don't even remember what it would happen during the day, but it would be 4 a.m. I'd be trying to rock him to sleep and just shoving muffins in my mouth just for sustenance. And like, you gotta live, man.
That's true. I have a friend who just got a kid. Like, well, it's been a year, but when I
Yeah,
remember, it's very fresh in our minds when he just got the kid, how his life changed and everything. His
it's
priorities
crazy.
changed. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I can. I don't say I can relate, but I definitely understand.
You enjoy your cooking and your working out whenever and practicing whenever you want.
Practice it. Yeah, exactly. Just being in nature too. There's
Yeah.
so much that I like to do.
There's something really special about nature and music because you don't have to, for me at least, I leave a piece or I go to a piece with all of these ideas about all of these judgments on myself, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
I wish I could play this clean. Why can't I play this cleaner? Or why doesn't this part make sense to me? Or why can't I get it to sound like so and so gets it to sound? And then you go for a walk, even if it's in the suburbs, or you go look at some water. You
Mhm.
just realize who cares? I
Yeah,
have my voice.
yeah.
I'm gonna learn how to make that clean one day. Maybe it's not today, but I have to live with that, you know? And there's all these really wonderful reflective qualities that come out of
What
nature.
you're looking for again is beauty. You want it to be
Right,
cleaner, or
right,
easier. Just it's more beautiful. I think in
right,
the end, it's
right.
all about that, right? That simplicity, that beauty that we were talking
Absolutely.
about. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure.
That
And
was great.
yeah,
Thank you.
and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, I would love that. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Ben. It's good to meet